Hi everyone. A while ago I was asked to do a tutorial on how I do my covers from start to finish. So here we are, I'm going to give it a go. I use as the basic board a 2mm grey board. I find it doesn't flex, it doesn't buckle under any wet media, and I do use a lot of glue to stick the cloth down over the top. And it doesn't warp. But by all means, you try whatever it is that you like. I've only found this because I've tried it, I liked it, but I've used 15mm, not 15mm, 1.5 millimeters. Sorry for the people in the States. I haven't got a clue what the conversion chart is, but this for me works a treat. So being in the UK, we have A3 size. It's good and it's bad. Now I like to make mine 8.5, which is there. These little set squares are brilliant because I can generally get a straight line. So for me, that's 8.5, and then I need to find the middle. So if I do it on that line, being A3, it is a bit of a pain. It's just under 5 7/8. So that's the middle. So yeah, anybody that buys one of my journals, if it's 5, just under 6, that's why, because it's A3. Now to cut it, I've got a guillotine. The guillotine doesn't work, not on this thickness of board. I've got a normal rotary cutter thing, not a chance. So I've got a metal rule with a nice straight edge on that side, and that's what I use to use a rotary cutter. Now if I line it up, and this is what I mean by a rotary cutter. Bog standard, dead cheap. Now I have to stand up on this because there we go. I do actually use this on my fabrics as well now. I think they're sold for quilting, and I can quite understand why, because they are brilliant. You get none of the scissor marks that I used to get. I'd lose my place, or I'd go on and I'd end up with a jagged line despite my best efforts. Right, so there are the front and back of my covers, and then I'll go on and I'll, same principle, 2-inch spine or however wide by 8.5 out to that side. So we're going to pretend, and in the true instance of blue peat, like people in the UK will know, here's one I made earlier. So there we have the board. I move this out of the way. So we've got front, back, spine. Now I do covered, let me go, one cloth covered books with the embossing underneath and then the fabric put over the top. I have done a tutorial on this, but I was asked to do one, a complete start to finish, so this is what we've done. What I'm going to do is actually show you how I do it on just a scrap piece for the time being, because I've got one that's already been done. So I have tons of washi tape. I went through a phase of gold, can you tell? And so now I I use washi tape to hold on my all my templates. Now this is a steel template. I use plastic ones, I use whatever takes my fancy. I use a spatula, which I think is for oil painting, I think. So it's a bit like icing a cake. Can be therapeutic, can drive you nuts. I'm not too worried about getting it all completely level because I can smooth it off after if I need to. So get rid of the lift it up carefully so she can use the bottom washi as a hinge. Now I'm a bit of a cheapskate, and so whatever I've got left, let's put that down for a moment, I'll put back in my pot for future use. I do keep, when I know I'm going to be doing stenciling, a tub of water, because if it does dry on there, it's really difficult to get off. So if I stick all that to one side, and then when I go back down to the house, I can wash it properly. So that is the stent. That is what will go underneath the embossing. What will go underneath the cloth. So that's the stencil done. Now onto the cloth. People are asking me what cloth do I use. I just use a bog standard cotton. That's all I've got. I don't know if you can see the thickness. About a couple of yards at a time, and cut them to size as I need them. Let's get rid of that. And that one. And that's what I cut out. It's about 2 inches bigger than I want my actual book. Looking for. What I do, so this is a cloth that's going to cover the book. So if we put it on, just to check that it's going to fit, I always leave a 1/4 inch gap between the spine and the two front and back covers. So there's plenty there, because eventually it will get wrapped up and round and trimmed down and all the rest of it. Colouring your cloth. I paint mine because I only do one at a time, and this one's an actual custom order. So you are watching, Lucy, if you're watching, this is the cover of your journal. What I've got is acrylic paint that I've watered down, and that's how I colour, and I paint it on. And this is how I colour my cloth. There probably is a whole better way of doing it, but I'm quite happy with this. I find it very relaxing, and I can vary it how I need to. I will say, which I forgot to say, I keep a bit of the cloth that I'm colouring, and I'll paint on that first. I've already tried this one on here, so I can see the colour. So progressively it's got darker as I've realised, that wasn't quite right. And then you just keep going. Time consuming, yep. But like I say, you can scrub it on, you can make it, add different colours in if you want to. That's what I like about doing it this way, so you're not restricted to one. Well, I suppose you could tie-dye them, couldn't you? I hadn't really thought of that. I live in Glastonbury, I should have thought of that. Right. All the New Age travellers live. So this can be quite time consuming, so I will switch the camera off for a moment, save my battery, and come back to you once I've finished doing my colouring in, as my husband likes to call it. Right, see you in a mo. Right, finished colouring. So that's what you get with it. Is messy. Thoroughly enjoy it. It's like being a kid. Plenty of tissue paper to hand. This now has to dry, so you can either use your heat gun, or you can, like for me today, it's lovely outside, so I'm going to stick it outside in the sunshine. What I will say, I tried to find different material to actually stitch my signatures to, and I was having a play around, and I watched a video by a lady called Sea Lemon about book cloth, and she suggested using this stuff as Core Bond, Heat Bond, Ultra Bond, which is really weird stuff. So it's adhesive, it's like a double-sided adhesive fabric stiffener, I think, which I put on to the same cloth that I've just covered, that I'm going to use to cover the book. So I bind it onto the back of a piece of this, and then place it on, iron it. That bottom part there, the shiny side, will stick to it. Peel the paper off, and then tissue paper she recommended. I'm pretty sure it was tissue paper. So I've got tissue paper that I wrap my journals in when I'm sending them out. So I gave that a go, and I have to say, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And that works really well for sewing your signatures onto. It's flexible enough. Now I've painted it, the reason for mentioning it is I've got a piece here somewhere. I've got buried amongst that. Here we go. So that will be sewing my signatures onto. I do my hidden stitch binding. So I'm going to paint it in the same colour as this, and then it will sit inside the book. Good, it's cheap, which I like. Cheaper, should I say, than using Craftex, which is what I started with, and then I went on to Sizzix paper leather. But that stuff gives you a lot more flexibility. Right, I am going to let this dry, put this outside, and then I'll come back and we will go over the basics of actually covering the book with the cloth. So I'll be right back. Right, the cover is now dry. It actually doesn't take very long outside in the sunshine. Saves my husband moaning about the fuel bills. And that is what you're left with. The back side, top side. I actually like the variation in colour, because I think it can look a bit flat if it only gets the one coat. Right, these are my boards. So I've got my front cover, my spine, the back cover. So I've got all the decorating done. So I've got the embossing, texture paste on that one. I've got a bit of lace to decorate the inside of the outside of the spine, and the back cover I've left plain. So next step, measure out where you want it. Right, I've marked my covers, because the amount of times I've stuck it on like that and then go, it's the wrong way. So I know That is the top of my board, and that's the outside edge. The aim is to leave an inch gap all the way round your cloth. You eventually will need to trim it down so you've just got an inch left on the cloth, which you can then fold out, which will then be folded over and glued. So, I know I've got about an inch, just over an inch on there, and that looks relatively straight. So what I do is I draw around where I want this front cover to go, because this goes on first, and that will then fit in there, ready to be glued on. So, next step. Oh, dirty paintbrushes. I use this decoupage glue, and I've had people ask me where can I get it from. I buy mine off Amazon. We live in a place where there isn't any proper shops, so I'm afraid I am now must be one of Amazon's biggest customers. So this is what I get, and I hope you can see that. There we go, Decoupage, and yeah, Amazon is where I get it from. I know it's supposed to be for decoupage, I think, but it works a treat for this. And the amount that you use, it actually is cost effective. So the idea is, you go inside. Those of you that have already watched the tutorial, please feel free to fast forward. I am messy. I know I'm messy. Hence why I keep one of these baking sheets as my messy mat, because then if I trash it, I don't care. So you're getting it all in the pattern without overloading the pattern, because it will seep through, which can look good in some respects, but sometimes you just don't want it. Right, that is enough of those. And then if I slide the mess over, there we go. In shot, yep, just. So making sure I've got my top and my outer edge lined up, and then press down. Let me get rid of this excess glue. That's the one disadvantage of being messy. You've got to clean up after yourself. So, there we go. Making sure your hands don't matter about the blue dye. So you're rubbing all over your cover to bring out the embossing. And the edges to make sure that you've got a good fit, although you can go back over the edges, that's not so important. These are the bits that you need to now I have been having a play around with something called a nipping press, which is what proper bookmakers use to hold a signature together, or the insides of a book, so they can cut them all properly, and it does hold. So I've been messing around with a variation on the theme, which is foam inside a couple of boards, but at the moment, unfortunately, I'm having to wait for dear hubby, who has his brain in other places, to actually drill me some holes so I can get my my boards together if I show you. What I've got is that big bit of felting. Well, I think it's sold for felting, which I've glued onto. They were, I think, one shelf unit, which I've sawn in half, glued one down. That goes on top of that. That's underneath, and at the moment I'm having to clamp them together, but it is so fiddly and so I'm thinking, right, drill a couple of holes in. So holes in each corner, coach bolts, wing nuts, press it down, and it will be so much easier. But for a small pattern like this, and because most people won't have anything like I've come up with there, let's do it the old-fashioned way. And what I use, I've got a little embossing tool that I use for my flowers, and just to pick out the outline, go over it. Now the cloth is still wet, so ideally this needs to dry off a bit, and then, but you can see what I'm on about, where the pattern starts to come out. I love this bit. It's like, woohoo, I've done it, it's worked. There's enough texture phase, there's enough glue. It takes time, it takes patience. Well, nothing was ever done in a day. Certainly not my journals. Right, I need to let this dry now because I can't do anything else until it starts to set, and the cloth will harden under the glue, and then you go back over it again and it will you will have your outline. Right, you can see the basics of it there, I hope. Can you? I really must get a different camera. Yeah, I think you can. There we go, that's better. So this now needs to dry, and then we need to put the spine on, wherever I've hidden that, and the back cover. But they are the easy ones compared to this. Is a bit fiddly. It takes a bit of time, a bit of thought and effort, like most things. So I will let this dry, and I will come back to you and we can finish off. Right, the cover's had half an hour or so outside in the sunshine, and that's dried off a treat. You can, like I say, just go quickly round the outside, and that will just bring out a bit of the definition. However much you want it to, I suppose, really. It's whatever you're happy with. And this is, I have to say, the best stage to do this. When the fabric's gone stiff from the glue and it's stuck in all the little bits. You'll find some that it's not. Don't panic about it. It'll still look really good. There. I am actually really pleased with that. Oh, Oh, this is my problem. Can't stop messing. Have to keep messing. There. So there we have our embossed, our raised embossed folder. Next step. You need to draw a line. So you've got your, this is your straight edge, and you are taking it across because this is what you're going to line the base of your spine and your back cover up with. Now I leave a 1/4 inch gap, so, and I know my spine, so she's forgetting, is 2 inches, so that's where my spine will sit, and then another 2 inch gap. So hold that there, and this will be for your top, and then mark it again. So you've got a 1/4, I've got a 2 inch spine, and then another 1/4, and then it really is a question of just drawing in as markers, just so you know that everything is going to line up. Oops, that one's a bit off. That's better. I'm sorry if my head's in the way. Right, so there's your front cover. Spine will go in there. And then my back cover will then hopefully fit in there. There we go. That's a question now of gluing all this lot in. So spine first, same principle as the front. So I've got some lace on there. So you just, let's move this out of the way, bring that in the middle. So the lace is going to be more absorbent, but you're still trying to get it, all the glue, to hold. Ideally you don't want it pulling because it will seep through, but on the other hand, if you don't put enough on, it's not going to stick. It's like everything I say, have a play. I can only show you what works for me. What works for me may not necessarily work for you. You might think, good God almighty, all that when she could be doing this. In which case, I would love to hear that there is an easier way of doing it. Honestly, I won't be offended. I would be mightily pleased. Let's get rid of all that so I don't get it on the rest of the cover. So I've got my top, and yeah, it is worth writing top on everything. So that goes in there. Now this I found I do need, to push down on because it moves on me, and because at the moment all it's catching on is the bit of lace. Turn it over. And the same thing again, same thing, exactly the same as for the front cover. I love this bit, it is like magic. Make sure it's all stuck on the edges, and then start moulding it. Let's get a bit of glue off. And there we go, spine, nearly done. That does need to dry because now the lace is quite wet underneath. So I will run around the edges, but I will wait for it to dry a bit, I think, before I start doing that. Just make sure everything is pushed down. Flip it over, and same thing again, but for the back. So enough glue to make it stick without soaking it all the way, so without having too much that it soaks through the material. To be fair, if it soaks through, it can act as a kind of resist, and it will, if you sand it or however you decide to distress it after, can make it look pretty good. But that's not the look I'm after with this one. Slide that bit out of the way, bring this in, make sure I've got the top. Put my ruler down as a guide so I can butt it up to that, and then I know I've got my 1/4 inch mark there. Push it down. Get that one out of the way. Flip it over and then rub down. And that's the basis of your cover. Now, like I said before, you're aiming to leave about 1 inch all the way around. I'm rubbish with guesstimating. I end up with 1/2 inch here, so I do a few quick marks. And then I know that that one was just over, which is fine. This one's a bit too much. It doesn't have to be precise, it is just what you're going to be folding over. But if you have too much bulk in it, it will show up under your inside papers. That was gonna be okay. And that bottom one isn't too bad. Sorry, boring bits. Boring but necessary. And then once I've cut round here, we need to actually just mitre the corners. Those of you that made, or still make, mini albums will know all about mitering corners. To get your paper to lie flat. That used to be my biggest bugbear. Just tidy these ones up. And when I made mini albums, I was always told to use double the thickness, or the thickness of the board that you were using, and put it across like that. Oh, I'm too impatient for that. So I've just marked where I'm aiming for, and you're cutting down to there and then up. So you need to leave enough that's just going to cover that. So you can tuck that bit in and then that will cover. That's it, like that. Oops. If you're not sure, err on the side of caution and leave a bit extra on. So that's the sort of shape you're looking for. That one, I'm not sure. We'll have a look. Oops, that's wrong. Yeah, that's it. Sorry. Right, now you can see where that hasn't quite caught on the edge. That just needs a touch of glue on there. Right, let's got that one. Missing that. That's fair. So what you're going to be doing is, I find it helpful to actually just fold it over to begin with. So you've got a sort of crease going on. Where's my glue gun? So what you're doing is, I paint it onto the fabric, you can paint it onto the board. I find that by painting it onto the fabric, I know I've got it in all the right places. Like I say, individual choice. It really is individual preference. I find I tend to follow tutorials to the letter to begin with, and then you find your own way after. And flip it over. Push it down so you got a nice tight fit. These bits won't matter if you've got a bit of glue on these, because you won't see them. Now mitering corners, got that bit, just fold it in onto the edge, and then when you come to folded that bit in, and then when you come to glue that bit down, got a nice sharp corner. So if you do it on both ends, so you just fold in that bit over there. So, right, now this bit. Excuse me. Same again. So flip it over. Nice and tight against the base or against the top of the board. And just push the edges in. Now this one, I think I might have done a little short, but the material will stretch over the top, so that's brilliant. Oops. Last few sides. Clean up the mess. Now these ones, the other way of doing it, of course, is just to fold it over. If your corners do look a bit out of shape, while the glue is still a bit tacky, just mould it to the right shape. They look, I'm quite pleased with those. Now this one. This one. Make sure there's enough glue actually to hold it to the edge of the board. So you need to put a bit down there as well. jumpers are for, isn't it? Yeah, I haven't got tissue paper handy. If you do get a bit of glue just seeping through, just quickly wipe it off, and it won't leave a stain. Right. There we are. And that, I have to say, I'm pleased with. So that one now needs going over with the embossing tool, and it all needs to dry properly. Right, camera battery sorted. As I was saying, that now, I've gone around the detailing on the flowers. I'm happy with that, although it's me and I probably will never stop messing. The next step is to put, if we just crease those in, because when you fold it up at the moment, there is no definition there. So we need to add in the definition. Now, if you're run a bead of glue down the edge, up here, it doesn't always stick. And then fold it over, so where you've just put it on the spine, and it will give you a nice crisp outline on the spine, like that. Now I will go in and do the other side. And then ideally you need some, I'm trying to do this so you can see it but hold it at the same time. You need it to run up the edge of the cart, the edge of the board as well. So you're looking for a nice crisp edge. The fabric is generally quite forgiving. A little bit of manipulation, and then we've got our nice crisp edge. Let's see where we are now, because I've got a height difference in because I've put lace on the spine. I take a couple of the offcuts, put them underneath just to raise up the front and back cover, and then keeping that one in place. I want to squeeze them together just to give them a bit of definition. So this one, that's gotcha. See, fingernails. Now what I do, if I bring that back into shot, it can be quite fiddly. I just run a pair of tweezers just to give it a bit of a crease. Down there. And then if I flip it over, you'll see what I mean. And then you've got your definition, your book shape. You can always manipulate it just to get it a bit more how you want it. And that is your finished. I've still to do this side, but you can see the difference. That's the side I haven't done, and that's the side I have done. There you go. So you're just trying to add. I'm sorry if my fingers are in the way. It's very difficult to and then just run your tweezers up to form that crease. Hopefully, there we go. So there we have the actual cover done. Now you can either go on, you can decorate these bits, you can, people use rub and buff, I think. I can't get on with that stuff, it goes everywhere. I tend to use gilding wax. Or you can leave it plain. You can sand it, you can go over it with a different kind of distress ink. You can do whatever you want to it. That's the beauty of these things. They are there to be played with. Right, my next step is, what have I done with it? Tyvek. Keeps it together, keeps its shape, I hope. And just adds a bit of stability to the spine. Now, I get my Tyvek in a roll like this. So it's sticky on one side and plain on the other. Now I need my, oops, I want my Tyvek to come halfway up the cloth. So 7.5. One. Can be like a box of snakes, this thing. Two. Oh, I found it easier to put this on. So I know roughly where I'm going to be positioning it. Oops, that side. If anybody's interested, I will put the link on for this. I did get it off Amazon, but then, like I said, I get everything off Amazon. All my laces, actually. No, come off eBay. So I'm trying to hold these two bits reasonably well together to keep the crease. That's roughly where I'm going to want the bottom bit to go. So I'll put one side on first. Then push it together and put the other side on. And then have a quick check. Yep, that's kept its shape. And then the same for the other side. Like I say, use your fingernails if all else fails. If you're stuck. Oh, There it is, hiding in plain sight. Now because I've got that one on, I know roughly where this one's got to go. So it's going to be there to there. And then push together. You can run down the seam so you get a better idea of, and sometimes a bit of a better stick as well. That's it. So there we have, that bit's annoying me, the finished book. So there we are. So that is a finished cover ready for decorating. Painted piece of that fabric. It's not quite dry yet, but I haven't, once I've cut it to size, that will go on there. Once I've stitched my, I've got 4 signatures to go in this one, so I will stitch my signatures onto that, trim it, or trim the length first and stitch it on. Then that will be glued on to there, and then the inside cover papers on top of that. And that is a completed cover from start to finish. So any comments, please feel free to leave underneath. If you want to see tutorials on anything else, then please, this was a suggestion from a lady, I can't remember her name at the moment. Please feel free to leave underneath, because I'm not sure what people want to see and what people don't want to see. So yeah, there you have it. I hope you found it useful, and I will speak to everybody soon. Take care. Bye.